Is it history or just a grand story? Tiptoe on the tightrope between fact and fairy tale, but watch out for ideologues playing puppet master with the past. The latest? Slavery had its perks, according to their history remix. Conservative publishers are obsessed with alternate history. Founding fathers are rock stars, no flaws allowed. But it turns out founders weren't all fans of the Enlightenment. But conservatives twist history to fit their narrative. Robert E. Lee, practically a saint. Why does this matter? Bad history sells, especially in conservative markets. It's not just a political struggle, it's a battle over reality itself. And this story is from NBC News by Mike Lofgren on November 4th, 2023. And I'll just say I have a lot of interesting things to say, so I'll let you guys get to it first. Helen, what do you have to say about this one?
Oh, I love some historical revisionists. People, that want to rely on people's feelings and their lack of education to kind of cherry pick history to fit a narrative. It's disgusting. And I hate to quote Ben Shapiro, but facts don't care about your feelings. I hate to do that, but it's true. And this is just another things that people that are racist and also are uncomfortable that white people did bad things in the past. And instead of looking at those things like right in the eye, they want to twist historical fact to pretend that the United States was always a Christian nation and we never did anything wrong. And it's just been a perfect utopia. I mean, like we're all living in a utopia right now, right, everybody? I mean, absolutely. That's exactly what's happening. So
duh.
It's a little bit of a problem. And I think a lot of the issue is people like Barton, who we'll go into a little bit later, is wanting to spin these narratives, not because he thinks he found new evidence. The reason is to play to a group of people that they want to believe in this fairy tale about America, and it gets twisted up into religion, into this Christian nationalist shit cake. And it's not good for anybody. So I do have more to say about this, and I probably have a couple questions, but I'm going to send it over to Scott over here.
Sure thing. And first of all, when I was reading this article, the tone I actually found a little bit off-putting. It seemed quite, it was from, what was it, salon.com. It seemed quite partisan, even more so than I would have expected. And so, not that I was disagreeing with what they were saying, and they were making their points and so forth, but just the tone of it put me on the defensive. And I don't even say that that's necessarily a bad thing. I like being put on the defensive when especially when I'm reading something that I'm expecting to agree with. It's nice to have that. But anyway, to quote a former nonprofit, Russell Glasser, my skeptic sense was tingling when I was reading this. But way back when I was for my first appearance on the nonprofits here, I found a research article that, and the article connected traditionally conservative Republican viewpoints with authoritarianism. Since then, I read this book called Authoritarianism and Polarization in American Politics by Hetherington and Weiler. And that book just contained a ton of research, and they found that they could tell a lot about an individual just by asking them a few questions about their views on authoritarianism. Should we focusing on aspects like loyalty and purity and that kind of stuff. And they found that there were very, very strong connections there. So whenever I see something like this, I try to look at it through the lens of authoritarianism. And so when I hear people talking about the founding fathers, my first thought is, so what? We do a lot of things different than the founding fathers. We do a lot of things better than the founding fathers did. And so, we're not Thomas Jefferson or George Washington or whomever you might want to either include or not include in that group. We live in a different world than they did, and we have different problems. We don't, our doctors don't follow the same advice that they had back then. And so, why should we expect the founding fathers to have these pearls of wisdom that can be applied to running our country now in the year 2023. But if I were somebody who was prone to be leaning towards authoritarianism, I would definitely be concerned about what the founding fathers said, because that, if you're an authoritarianism or authoritarianist, that's hard to say 10 times fast. If you're one of them, then you're looking for that authority figure. Those founding fathers, that serves a role. That's the essence of what it is to be an American. And so if they say what you're saying, boy, that sure makes you, really have your finger on the pulse of what's needed in this country. And so, so if we look at it through that lens of authoritarianism, it makes total sense that this is what's happening. It's not about the truth or falsity of the claims, or the truth or the accuracy or inaccuracy of the history. It's, does what the authority says match what I believe? And so, again, if we look at it from that perspective, I think it really makes a lot of sense. Having a history that matches what you believe gives you a sense of validation and even a sense of righteous justification. And we see the same things happening in religion too. We see maybe even way more in religion than we see in politics, different interpretations of the Bible. And it's amazing and very coincidental that the interpretation that a person has on an authority figure, on a authoritative text, authoritative document from history, it's amazing that their interpretation always matches what they were thinking anyway. It's crazy. And so, I find that looking at it that way really helps to understand where they're coming from. And in order to change somebody's mind, or to have a productive conversation with somebody, or to make some kind of connection, you have to have that understanding of where they're coming from and what's motivating them. And, that's something that I use in the classroom all the time. You have to, teaching is not something that's done to a student. It's a relationship between the teacher and the student. It's a back and forth. And if you don't know how the person is hearing you, then you have no idea how your message is landing in their ears. And so, Infidel, what are your thoughts there? You seem to be doomed to follow me on each of these articles here this week. So sorry about that.
Well, I have to say that I think you really laid out an important point, is that, but not only is there a monolithic motivation, there's, we see two things at play. We see a group of people who are taking advantage of those who are easily led by a group of ideas or beliefs that, confirm what they already want to believe or what they want to think. But the real force at play are the people who are taking advantage of it. I mean, because hate is always in fashion. I would say that the colors change, but that would be dishonest, because there's no reason to find new things to hate when the old ones will do. And that's what we're seeing a lot with what's going on now. We're seeing what wasn't that long ago to be unacceptable things on the right to say in public. Now we have a Speaker of the House who is promoting a constitutional convention to, could potentially put away our Constitution. Those are things that would be considered rather extremist, but this is what they've been looking for a long time. I think we've seen hate become professionalized. I think we're seeing people on two convergence. You mentioned religion as well. And I think religion plays a huge role in what we've seen on this uptick of the right wing and their shrill behavior. We're seeing a group of people in this country, the white majority is facing the reality that they're going to become a plurality in the next 20 years. And rather than say, okay, well, I've had white privilege, but being aware of that now, and instead of making them learn the valuable lesson that they could, oftentimes what it's doing is kicking them into victimhood, where, we're the ones who are being wronged, whether it's religion, whether it's race, it's the others that are, the problem, not me, not my group, but them. And with seeing that and Christianity being on decline, I think that they're losing and they know it. And I know there's hope for the people who believe these doctrines of hate and authoritarianism. I know I didn't choose to stay with it. And, but the truth is the words that we hear now were the words that we heard decades before. And the reason they haven't changed is because these views come from the same place. They come from fear of change, fear of the unknown, fear of them, whatever them is. And that is what's being taken advantage of here. Fear is easier than trust, no doubt about it. It is a safer option. But I have to admit, trust is much more rewarding. Fear only brings downsides. And for people who are wrapped up in this right-wing propaganda machine, I can only say, just step outside of your own comfort zone. I promise you, it's worth it. Blatant?
I love everything y'all said, but I want to touch on the actual article, because when I opened it, it opened up with just a quote that I love. It's from George Orwell's book 1984. I don't know if you ever heard of it. No, in these circles we don't talk about things like that.
I think I read that book.
You might
I
have.
did.
It's like a school reading.
It's so obscure.
But the quote states, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." And me being a card-carrying member of the Black delegation, I can attest to being part of a community of people that have historically been without control, or like control over our own beings, let alone our own history. You know what I mean? So this is why I just now learned within the last year that in 1825, there was a thriving Black community of free people in Central Park. We all know what's in Central Park now. It's not a community. So like, these are things that I didn't learn into adulthood. I also bet that you guys didn't even know that George Orwell didn't actually write 1984. He plagiarized it from an Italian author by the name of Matteo Mancini. And this is the man that I literally just made up because facts mean fuck all in this dumb decade.
Fished in.
They still don't care about your feelings, Blatant.
But like, you see how easy that is. Like, for saying anybody hearing that is like, oh damn, what, George? Come on, man. But like, it's that easy to plant a simple seed of doubt using actual things and manipulating them for my own purposes.
Right.
And the weird thing is, here's the crazy thing. So I went ahead and Googled the name Matteo Mancini, author. And I actually found someone named Matteo Mancini who was an author, and he was born in 1983.
See, now I don't believe anything you say. You blew it. Like, the trust is broken. It's going to take time.
Yeah, right. That quick Google. Like, imagine somebody who didn't just make up this person Googling Mancini. Like, you know what I mean? Googling this person, it would send you down a rabbit hole that you would never get out of.
Yeah.
So like, that's the crux of the whole thing. Like, why do we, just humans in general, why do we jump to conspiracies in the first place? And it's, I think it was Infidel that kind of touched on this. We want to feel like we know something that other people's don't. Like, we get that sense of control, and especially living in times like now where there's this intense lack of control, it's much easier to plant that seed. So like, I feel like I'm going to say this is my opinion. A lot of our history is propaganda, and living outside of the States has really driven that home for me. Like, once I started to see how every other country has their version of the events that I've learned about throughout my whole life, and each country comes out smelling like roses. You know what I mean? You get a sense of, oh, okay, so it's everybody
there's a pattern here.
Yeah, everybody has an angle here. But like, I don't know how to rewrite history, or even what channels that I would have to go through in order to discover the truth of the past. But here's what I do know. There are things happening as we speak that are being misrepresented and twisted to fit a narrative. And it's absolutely on us to ensure that moving forward, history is preserved and never told through only one lens. Like, it's much easier for people, well, it was much easier for people before to write something down and just say, history, boom, done. Anybody that questions this, you're a liar and your breath stinks. It was that easy. But like, that's not the situation that we're in currently. We have the technology, people. We have a means of communications with the entire world that is unique to our time. Like, when Tulsa was bombed in 1921, nobody had an iPhone. I was in my 30s the first time I even saw a photo of Tulsa as a thriving community and not rubble. Like that's not something like it's not something that I want for future generations. I don't want my grandchildren or their children to find out what the remains of the Middle East once looked like. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's up to us to maintain the reality of today so that we have an accurate depiction of what will once be history.
Right.
I said I had a lot to say, and that was it. Helen, what you got for me?
That was good.
Well, because when I was reading this article and I started thinking about, you're talking about how information is just right at our fingertips. Like we want to know something, but it's a double-edged sword because I know the algorithm feeds me that I'm like, it knows that I want to look at scholarly journals, that I'm looking for, more nuanced information because I've learned, I went to college, everybody, and I learned how to do research. So I'm a little bit picky when it comes to those things, but for some people, they don't know what they're looking for. As you said, we like things that match our feelings, that make us feel like we're right, and also that we discovered something, new. Like I always feel like when I find something that I think is new and I tell somebody else, they're like, I already knew that. I'm like, God damn it! like I wanted to feel like I want to feel like an archaeologist, and I found something cool, and I want to share with people, but it doesn't work that way. And I think also too, when we're talking about like the revisionist history, this is getting now infiltrated into schools. Like where I live in Florida, this revisionist history narrative is being pushed into schools. That is a real problem. I know Scott agrees with me on this as a teacher, and our other people that are educators, they will say this is completely messed up. And teachers that actually, like history teachers that actually, went to get a degree to teach people history, now have to twist and think about how they're going to teach things. And that's a problem. It's a deep problem. And if you don't have your skeptical spidey senses on, if you're not trying to remind yourself you do need to be proven wrong to know what the truth is, you have to remember that. It's going to make you uncomfortable, everybody. Sometimes we don't like to learn things that make us uncomfortable, but it makes you a more educated, well-versed person and helps expand your mind a little bit more. So, I'm just saying that, you might be uncomfortable. It's okay. It's going to pass. I promise. Drink a bottle of wine. It'll be fine. So anyway, Scott, now that we're heading towards the end section, everybody gets 60 seconds to give their opinion. Go.
Opinion on our next bit here.
Whatever. What are your last final thoughts?
Last words. Well, I wanted to reiterate.
Last words, everybody.
Reiterate what Blatant was saying about the desire to see if it gives you a sense of knowing something. If the idea of a conspiracy theory. It also gives that sense of superiority, right? It gives, I was able to figure something out and you sheeple were not able to come up with it. So it's like a liquor. It's like an enticement. It's like a siren calling to you. It's like, oh, I will validate all of your most horrible beliefs and I will give you this sense of being better than everyone else. Come to me, come to this sweet island of misinformation. And it's just, it can be very tempting. It can be very tempting. And so, as weak human beings, I'm almost surprised it doesn't happen more. I suppose that's the information age that we're in, right? It makes everything easier, including misinformation. I think I was 68 seconds on that.
Well done.
Well, first, let me say this very clearly. Since the book 1984 was brought up, you haven't read 1984 unless you've read it in its original Klingon. Just starting there.
There's lots of nuance in there.
Yes,
There's lots of nuance.
Especially the opera scenes.
Right,
now,
right, yeah.
Seriously, though, I do think that the right is fighting a losing battle, and that's the one thing that gives me hope. People constantly exposing that, and not as, you're stupid for believing that, but just poking the holes, coming around the edges and forcing people to think about things that their circle's not going to make them think about, that the people who think the same way they do aren't going to make them think at all. Because I'm the kind of person, let's grab it, let's blow it up, let's blow some shit up, and we'll figure it out from there. But the truth is, that's not the effective way to do it. Maybe more fun, maybe more instant gratification, but I think these conversations are important to point out the flaws and the weaknesses in all of our thinking, because we're all, as we pointed out, vulnerable to this. So it's always good to be on your toes. Blatant?
I was literally
Actually,
going to echo that exact. Yeah, I was going to echo that exact same sentiment. I just want everybody to remember Matteo Mancini. Just think about that. Every time you feel like you're too smart to be fooled by this, or I was a Christian, I've gotten out of it, and I know when it's coming now. I see it coming. No, you don't always see it coming. Stay skeptical. That's my message to everybody. Stay skeptical. You are not above the fray. We are all sheeple to some degree. Just be careful.
Yep.
Because I said better myself. So, hey, if you don't want to be a sheeple and you want to stay skeptical, click above and watch some more nonprofits and get more stuff into your brain.